everyone, I'm Melissa McAllister, and you're listening to The Melissa Made Show. Now, for decades, I've dedicated myself to helping women break the cycle of dieting, navigate through all the fads, and change their lives through my nutrition coaching. Now, each week, I'm going to talk about everything from deep nutrition, mindset, self-care, the ideal workout routine, tips on how and why to implement intermittent fasting in your life, my favorite recipes that are not only crowd pleasers, but they're actually healthy for you, and so much more. Now, with small and consistent changes, you can defy aging while living a happier, healthier, and more heart-filled life. I'm so excited to show you it's possible with the right strategies that are so simple to adopt. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Melissa Made Show. So I think I've mentioned this in the past before that I have had, ever since starting this podcast, I was really surprised that once I started it, how many people have reached out to me asking to actually be on the podcast. So it's been really cool. I have found people and brought people to you that I didn't even know were in this space. However, our next guest, Miss Tabatha Barber, was one that I sought out. She was referred to me from a follower saying, I really think you would like her. So I started following her many, many months ago, and they were right. I am so excited to have her on the show today. And I was just telling her because there's so many questions that you guys ask me that are so important. And that these same questions are asked over and over and over again. And I just want one spot for all of my ladies out there, from, being pregnant and or suffering from PCOS to postmenopausal, just to have one place to just learn a lot of information about us as women. And I cannot think of a better person than Dr. Tabatha. Her social media is phenomenal and just such a wealth of knowledge. And one of the things I really love about her, which you're about to see, is you can just tell she's incredibly empathetic and really, really, truly cares about the individual. And so we're going to dive in deep, but let me give her a little introduction first so that you guys know a little bit more about her. She's triple board certified OB GYN physician who specializes in using functional medicine as her primary way of treating women's health. She's passionate about educating women on the importance of a healthy body, healthy mind, and spirit. Her common conditions that she treats are hormonal imbalances, hot flashes and mood swings, PMS, acne, skin disorders, irregular and painful periods, endometriosis, and pelvic pain. She is seriously just the sweetest thing on the planet. And I have asked her if I can just kind of rapid fire questions to her of all the questions that you guys ask me, because there's so many things out there that we are so confused about when it comes to women's health and what's best to do. And sometimes we're even embarrassed to ask those questions. So that's one of the things that I want to put out there for you, so you guys have that resource and you can share it with other people. So first and foremost, thank you, Dr. Tabatha, for being on this podcast. It really means a lot to me.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me. We need to have these conversations for women. We don't talk about this stuff enough. We all suffer in silence. So I'm so excited that you're doing this for your listeners.
Oh, well, thank you. So can you start off by kind of explaining what functional gynecology is, in comparison to conventional gynecology?
Yeah, definitely. So I went into gynecology thinking I was going to help women. That was my primary goal, was to be a women's advocate, give them a voice and a choice in their health, give them options. It's something I did not have as a teenage mom, a high school dropout, that whole thing. I had a very traumatic pregnancy and delivery from a very old family practice doctor who didn't listen to me. Things were done to me. Nothing was explained. It was very traumatic. Out of that, I developed Hashimoto's. And it was because I wasn't using my voice. That's where the thyroid lives. And it's very often that women will develop thyroid issues when there are deeper issues going on. So, I got my crap together. I figured it out. I became a doctor. And what I found was I was drenched in this super busy practice. I was super popular. I delivered all the babies around town. Everybody, quote unquote, loved me. And I was miserable and exhausted. I was sleep deprived. I was living on donuts and coffee. I was delivering babies all night, doing surgeries and seeing patients all day. I wasn't raising my own kids. And so I broke myself. Like I had to take 4 months off to heal my back. And the system that I devoted my entire life to was failing me. And I realized I was failing my patients because what I was doing wasn't sustainable, right? And that's how I found the world of functional medicine. I found Mark Hyman. I read Eat Fat, Get Thin, changed my life. I picked up Whole30 and I did that for 4 weeks. And I was in shock at how different I felt, like amazed. And that led me on this whole journey of studying functional medicine. And so after those 4 months, I tried to go back to my regular gig as an OB/GYN, and those 15-minute appointments cranking patients through just didn't work anymore. I wanted to know, how are they sleeping? What are they eating? You know, how's the relationship with their husband? I just couldn't hand out the birth control pills and do the surgeries anymore. And what I come to realize is gynecologists, we're actually surgeons. We're not hormone experts. I pretty much learned as much as a family practice doctor did about how the hormonal system works, how to really keep it in balance, how to regulate it. Literally, my training consisted of, we use birth control pills to override the system for every little symptom that they have. And if the pill doesn't work, you try a different pill, because there's over like 30 different kinds. And so that was like the daily running issue in our office, was someone was always calling the triage nurse because they didn't like their pill and they needed a new kind. And me and my partners would be just like, well, I don't know, let's try low estrogen today. Like it was a joke, because it was just a guessing game. We weren't actually fixing the root cause of the issue. We were covering up symptoms with these pills and giving new symptoms.
Yep.
And the other piece of it was, I was doing a lot of surgeries that weren't really fixing the root cause of the issue. You know, I did a ton of endometriosis surgery where you take the robot, you put the arms in the abdomen and you remove the endometriosis, but it just kept growing back because I wasn't actually fixing why it was growing in the first place, which is gut dysbiosis and liver dysfunction leading to hormone imbalances and inflammation. And so once I learned all of this, like, you can't go back, right? Once you know better, you have to do better. And so conventional gynecology is very much symptom oriented. It's a Band-Aid approach to relieving your immediate complaint. And it often leaves you with new complaints. You know, the common thing now is women going into menopause will go in and say, I'm depressed, I've gained weight, I don't want to be with my husband anymore. The solution is an antidepressant. That is the standard of care according to ACOG, the American College of OB/GYNs, and the North American Menopause Society. Do women actually need antidepressants at menopause? No. It makes them gain more weight and have less libido. So they're more miserable. And that we are doing women a huge disservice the way we are currently practicing conventional gynecology. And so functional gynecology, I feel like I just made up the term because I was like, I don't know, what am I doing now? I'm doing functional gynecology. I'm getting to the root cause of why you're having your GYN issues. It's not because you need a birth control pill or a surgery. It's so much deeper than that. And so if you figure out why you're having these hormone imbalances that are driving all these GYN problems, you can actually heal. You can actually feel amazing and be in balance instead of just like swapping out one symptom for another and leading down the chronic disease path of cancer and diabetes and obesity and all that terrible stuff. Does that make sense?
Yes, I swear I can hear all the listeners. They just took a huge deep breath because
Yes.
I think they just felt heard. And I think that's wonderful. So on social media, on Instagram, you are known, and probably TikTok as well, the Gutsy Gynecologist, which I love that name. Can you share with the listeners the link between your women's health and your gut, how, one affects the other and how you can take care of your gut in order to take care of your health as a woman, how those two are connected.
Yeah, so I like to give a little visual. So when I would do surgeries for endometriosis or fibroids or ovarian cysts or whatever reason I'm going into the abdomen and the pelvis laparoscopically or robotically, the bowels, your bowels literally lay on your ovaries, your fallopian tubes, and your uterus. There is nothing separating them. They physically live together. So it's like how my fingers are touching right now. The bowels are constantly touching your pelvic organs, and everything that's going on in there at a cellular level, all the chemicals that are being produced are being transmitted through the tissue to your pelvis. And so if you can imagine having a gut microbiome that's off, having dysbiosis, having yeast overgrowth in your gut or parasites, causes your cells to make a bunch of chemicals to respond to that. We call those cytokines, interleukins, all kinds of fancy terms. Those chemicals, they cause an inflammatory cascade. So you get all this inflammation in your gut. You may or may not have gut symptoms. You may have just like systemic symptoms like fatigue, headaches, acne, all stemming from your gut. But what you're also going to have is an inflamed and angry pelvis. So those ovaries are going to be inflamed. They're not going to want to make their estrogen and progesterone. They're not going to want to ovulate. It completely affects fertility. I do case reviews for a company called Fab Fertile, and like healing the gut is the number one thing that you can do if you're struggling with fertility because of that reason. So it's really important to understand that what's going on in the gut directly anatomically affects your pelvis and your organs, but also indirectly. Like one of the really cool things I remember learning was about beta glucuronidase. It's an enzyme made by bacteria in your gut, and it will actually cut the garbage tag off of your estrogen that your liver worked so hard to put on there once you were done using that estrogen and it was sending it out of your system to go bye-bye. That bacteria will cut that garbage tag off and you'll reabsorb it. And the cooler thing is that I believe it's an innate intelligence, because at menopause, we want to recirculate some estrogen when those levels go down a little bit. And so we tend to see menopausal women have more of these bacteria and more of this beta glucuronidase, so they keep that estrogen that little bit they have. But the problem comes in when you have younger women who don't need to recycle their estrogen. They need to leave their body, and that can lead to estrogen dominance. And so just knowing that the bacteria actually have something to do with our hormone levels, that like blows my mind, and that's just really cool. And the gut in general, when we talk about the digestive tract, that includes the liver, the gallbladder, the pancreas, everything needed to digest the food that we're taking in, assimilating our vitamins and our nutrients and absorbing all of that stuff. That's all involved in hormone production, metabolism, and removal. So another common thing that we see is women in their 30s and 40s having gallbladder attacks, needing their gallbladder removed, right? You probably get a lot of questions about that. It's really common to have a flare up during a pregnancy and then have your gallbladder removed right after pregnancy, because as surgeons, we're just taught to remove the offending organ. Like if the organ's not functioning the way we want it to, just remove it. What's the problem with that, right? Remove the appendix while you're in there too. There's huge problems with that. Unfortunately, that is setting women up for other issues long term. And the reason her gallbladder wasn't working in the first place has to do with hormone imbalance, because estrogen helps the gallbladder contract, but too much estrogen makes the gallbladder sluggish. And so the gallbladder will stop contracting the bile and releasing the bile. Bile is needed to help absorb and transport fats, cholesterol, toxins, plastics that you get in your body, everything. And when you can no longer contract and release the bile the bile sits there, it hardens, it turns to stones and causes all these issues. So really, you need to fix the estrogen dominance picture, the hormone imbalance, decrease your toxic burden of how much you're asking the gallbladder to work, and your gallbladder won't make stones. So you remove the gallbladder, then you can no longer transport those things very easily, because now you have to use your liver to make bile on demand and get things moving. And that's really hard to do. So then women are struggling to eat healthy fats, and they're not absorbing their vitamin A and their vitamin D or their hormones, because our hormones are all made from fat, cholesterol. So it's all a big vicious cycle. And if we don't look at the root cause of the gut as like what's happening in the gut, you'll never fix hormones.
Yeah, totally agree. And really fast, because that is something very common. A lot of people, when I work with people, a lot of times I can guess that they don't have a gallbladder. They forget to tell me that they don't have one because of their symptoms. But when someone doesn't, when their gallbladder has been removed, is there any advice or any, lifestyle or nutritional, points that you give people in order to help keep all of that you just said that the gallbladder is in charge of doing now that you don't have one, that you can still ensure that, the hormones are being regulated and the toxins are being, left out and the fats are being absorbed? Anything that you can help somebody that doesn't have a gallbladder still live optimally?
Yeah. So you really want to love on your liver. You really want to make sure you're not abusing your liver, because it has to be able to produce bile on demand now to handle that job. And if your liver is bogged down with metabolizing alcohol every day, that's a huge problem. Or Tylenol or Benadryl, a lot of over-the-counter medications, or even prescription medications. The liver will always metabolize, which means deactivate, exogenous stuff first, things from outside of the body. So even though it has to take care of estrogen and your hormones and all your internal stuff, it will take care of alcohol and medicines before that. And so it's really common for women to get into this estrogen dominance picture if their liver is too busy metabolizing alcohol and Tylenol and all this other stuff. So you want to really think about, how can I support the liver? You can support it by doing stuff like eating bitters, eating artichoke, eating beets, getting dandelion root tea in on a regular basis. Anything to support good liver function is going to be helpful. And I would say you might need ox bile to help you eat your meals. A lot of women need some digestive support with their meals, especially their fattier and higher protein meals. And I typically advocate a lot of fat for my women, because fat makes you healthy. I mean, that's just the truth. Healthy fats, obviously. And if you aren't able to absorb that from your gut, then you're going to struggle to ever have balanced hormones, to even make your hormones. And so ox bile is one of my favorite go-tos. I think tucca is something that is bile acids that can be helpful as well. So Designs for Health has a product, LVGB. It's kind of got all this stuff in it together, which is really nice as well. So love on your liver.
And I just love how you instantly go to just taking care of yourself. I mean, there was nothing that, it's, through food that is always, that nutrient dense whole food diet. And I'm a big advocate of healthy fats as well. So I love hearing that.
And can I just say, that's not how I used to think, the 15 years I practiced conventional medicine, that is not how I thought. And it took a lot of educating and learning new ways for me to really be able to say that, because our medical system is really, really antiquated. Like, I learned the same thing doctors in 1970 learned. Unfortunately, it just doesn't change. It doesn't keep up. It's not focused on health and wellness. It is a disease-based model. They're trying to manage your disease. They want to diagnose it and manage it. And that's just a completely different mindset. So I tell women all the time, don't even be mad at your doctor. They're just as exhausted and broken as you are. They don't know how to fix themselves. They don't know how to fix you. You know, if you get hepatitis, they can diagnose you for sure. But it's like, that's not the world of wellness. So we're just asking the wrong people to help us. And so that's why it's so important for women to listen to podcasts like yours and follow you and follow me to like see the other side of it, because medicine is not about wellness, but that's where it is possible. Like,
Yeah.
I'm healthy. I avoided a second back surgery. I healed myself. My thyroid, my Hashimoto's is like completely managed. Like, life is totally different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to go back to, because I think once, I'm 48 years old. And once we start getting to that age and we start to notice perimenopause coming up is when we really start to pay attention to hormones. When we really, as women, period, should be paying attention, period. No pun intended, should be paying attention to our hormones and hormone health. And can you enlighten the followers? Because I get asked all the time, should I get my hormones tested? I can't lose weight. And sometimes it's hormones, sometimes it's diet, sometimes it's both. But, just kind of give an overview of kind of all the hormones that us women have, and, maybe what are symptoms or signs that maybe something isn't functioning well, and just what we can do to have a healthier lifestyle, especially through food. And because I know your mind, body, and spirit, all the things that you can do to kind of just keep yourself in that balance that you talk about a lot on your social media.
Yeah, so I really want to shift how we view women's, hormones and their cycles in this country, because we really are just taught to be ashamed and embarrassed. As soon as my 10-year-old started having her period, she didn't want anyone to know. And God forbid we bought anything at the store when anyone was around. Like, it's still that way. That's how it was when I was little. We don't talk about it. We shame it. And it should not be that way. It should be a normal conversation. It's a measure of health, because your periods are a vital sign. They tell us so much about what's going on in your body. And so if you have painful periods, you have gut inflammation. If you have long and heavy periods, you probably have estrogen dominance. If you have short, irregular periods, you probably don't have enough progesterone, so we need to know these things that's happening. If you have severe PMS, that's telling me that your hormones are super high and then they're dropping from a really high level. And so we need to know these things so that we know where to investigate and start looking for the root causes. And we're too busy covering up all of these symptoms that we can't read them. We can't understand these messages anymore. That's the problem with endometrial ablation and hysterectomy, is you're getting rid of the period, which I understand for some women. You have really heavy periods, you're anemic from it, you really want to stop that bleeding. I completely understand. I would love to take you back 6 or 12 months when it wasn't that bad and help you find the root cause of your hormone imbalance, and you wouldn't have to go down that path. So I just want women to understand, like, don't wish your period away. Like, use it for the information that it's giving you, right? Because it's so valuable. And if we can teach our young girls that, like, track your period, track how you're feeling. I remember like 10 or 15 years ago, trying to do some high intense cardio workout the day before my period. And I just thought, I wonder if we're not supposed to exercise heavy right before our period. And I started thinking about, I wonder if we should move our bodies differently during our cycles. 5 years later, boom, like everybody in, the media is like, you need to exercise according to your cycle. I'm like, thank God that I'm not the only one who realized this. Like, it really does matter where your hormones are at what part of the month. And if you know how to optimize that, you'll be a superwoman. Like literally that is our superpower, but we fight against it. We try to push that away when we should be embracing it and being like, yeah, I'm in my second week. I'm full of energy. Like, let's tackle all the projects or whatever, So it's just trying to understand how we feel during those weeks. And that demands that we pay attention to our bodies. And we're just really brainwashed into ignoring our bodies, ignoring that intuition that we all have as little girls. And it's dampened. We just get yelled at. We get told to ignore it to the point where we just don't hear it anymore. And women always say to me, like, I can't even hear what my body's trying to tell me. And part of it is that they're listening to their brains. There's a big difference. The lies going on in your brain, like, I'm not good enough, I'm too fat, I'm not pretty enough, like all of that stuff, I'm not smart enough. That's all brain chatter. Those are all just recordings playing that are all lies that we need to like actually deal with. But your body tells you in physical sensations. And if you can get back to that, like, how is my period? How do I feel during this time of the month? Do I want to cry? Do I want to punch my husband? Like, how am I feeling? You can start to figure out your patterns, and it can be super empowering because then you know how to like go through your day.
Yeah, absolutely. And this just popped in my head. Do you recommend or believe in the seed cycling?
So there is some evidence that seed cycling is beneficial because of the high dose of omega-3s and certain things in those seeds, that we need fats and proteins to make our hormones, to make our energy in our mitochondria, all the little powerhouses inside of our cells. So I don't think that we eat enough protein as women, especially now with this movement of veganism and like trying to help the planet by making all of this fake food with these, grain crops and things. But I promise people, like, growing grains is destroying our world faster than having cattle around. People can be mad at me for that, but that's the truth. And we've genetically modified our grains so much that women's bodies don't even recognize those proteins anymore. I see this every single day with my patients. Why can't I tolerate gluten? Why can't I eat grains? Because your body thinks it's a foreign substance. It doesn't recognize the protein anymore. Like, the gliadin protein is no longer the same. It's been so genetically modified. So I get more and more women every single day with this non-celiac gluten sensitivity or these autoimmune processes developing. And as soon as they give up the gluten, or for some even all the grains, like their whole world opens up. Just like mine. I felt so much better. And you and I were talking before the show. It's like, once you clean yourself up and you've hit that reset and you eat like crap, it's so much more obvious, because when you eat like garbage all the time, you feel garbage all the time. It's not super obvious, but I hear this from literally every patient that goes through my Healthy Her program. Oh my God, I didn't know that I could feel that good. And I felt terrible when I tried to eat the way I used to. It was so much more obvious. I hear it every time. And so I just think that's a big key. Like, you can't smell the garbage if you're living at the garbage dump, right?
Love that.
But if you visit the garbage dump, you're going to smell it. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the points that I had put in my notes here was talking about animal-based food for hormonal health. I think it's the way that you posted it on your social media was very kind, because it's so controversial, obviously. And I think the way that it's one of my favorite things about you. You just put it in such a matter-of-fact, kind way that animal-based nutrients are incredibly important for women's health and hormonal health. Can you elaborate on that just a little bit more? Are you ready to learn the secret behind how I continue to be so healthy? Well, it all comes down to science. If you've been listening to my show for a while now, you may have heard me mention something called the MAID diet. Yes, that's right, because I'm so passionate about how learning about the effects that nutrition has on the human body, I always seek to learn as much as I can and apply that knowledge. One of my best learning tools has been self-experimentation. And now in my late 40s, I have to say, I've done a pretty good job. It's hard to find trustworthy, even accurate information in this country between the influence of big corporations with monetary agendas, the nutrition labels designed to deceive, and downright misleading information that you were taught in school. Navigating food and nutrition with your optimum health in mind can be quite challenging. Take the food pyramid, for example. In an ideal world, I'm sure we would all love to eat pasta and baguettes for every meal, but that's simply not what's best for our bodies, our health, and our longevity. Now, I spent years developing the MAID diet in a way that I wish someone had taught me, and I break it all down in my MAID diet course. People are always asking me what I eat, so we start there. What I eat in a day and which foods are the most beneficial. So think something in between the Mediterranean and the paleo diet. It's a lifestyle plan that incorporates moderate protein, adequate fat, decreased carbs, and an introduction to intermittent fasting. But please, I want you to keep in mind, just because I say decrease carbs, I don't mean decrease carbs in what your body needs. I just mean decrease carbs in what the standard American diet has become. You still get plenty of quality carbohydrates, just not in the mass amounts we have been eating to get us into such an unhealthy state. And of course, we're going to talk about what foods to avoid because that's just as important. We even talk about how to eat healthy on the go because let's face it, we're busy and that's just life. And then there's intermittent fasting. I share all of my favorite tips and tricks and a lot of science are along the way. I could not say enough good things about intermittent fasting, and I'm honestly so surprised more people aren't doing it. You'll also learn how I've learned to balance my hormones and feel my best because so many women struggle with this. And lastly, we cover the mindset behind making a change because we all know that your mindset is the key to your success in anything that you do. So if you are struggling with diet in terms of feeling your best or you are ready to take your health to the next level, I strongly recommend you check out this course. Now, the course is structured in 5 modules, 16 lessons, and a whole lot of research to back everything up. So I want you to visit my website, themaiddiet.com or melissamaid.com, and you will see a tab for the course. Click on that to get access today and learn why you should be eating this way too.
So one thing that really caught my attention when I was studying functional medicine was, and I had learned this in the first year of medical school in biochemistry, but I have forgotten it. When we are burning fats for fuel, doing beta oxidation, so we can burn sugar or carbohydrates for fuel and make glucose, or we can burn fats for fuel through beta oxidation and make ketones. The rate limiting step for beta oxidation is L-carnitine. These are all big fancy words, but L-carnitine is an animal product. And if we don't have that in our diet, we struggle to burn fats for fuel in general. We have to go through a long, drawn out backwards pathway to get the fats into the cells for beta oxidation, as opposed to L-carnitine, boop, takes it right into the cell. Like that was a game changer for me because my daughter was vegan for, I don't know, 15 or 20 years. And so I've always been very respectful of that fact and tried to understand, is she healthy? Is this okay? And then she had my grandson and they were going to raise him that way. And that fact was like, he's going to struggle to use his fats without animal proteins, without that L-carnitine. And I didn't say anything, but I just prayed. And she transitioned this past year. She is now eating, they're all eating animal protein. And she is so much happier. It was completely affecting her mood and her energy and her ability to use her brain and to function. And so just to see that transition really solidified everything I thought and felt, and I'm not trying to push my beliefs on people. I'm trying to say the science shows that our cells need certain animal proteins for their processes. And if they don't have it, there's workarounds, but it's a lot more work. And so you have to use more ATP, more energy molecules to do those processes. And so then you can be left in a net deficit very easily. So the bigger thing I see is that so many women, they think it's healthier to be vegan, so they go vegan and they just end up eating a lot of processed foods because there isn't necessarily a lot of fresh produce and vegetables and things like that for them throughout the year. And if you're relying on processed food, that's just not healthy, period. I don't care what way you want to go eating. Like, that stuff is not healthy. It's full of toxic chemicals, which burden the liver and everything else. Then we go back down that pathway. So your hormones really do, I believe, want you to eat clean, healthy animal proteins. The problem with animals is when they're mass produced and they're pumped full of antibiotics and hormones. If you're eating grass-fed, free range, all of that, you're like, feel amazing.
Yeah, I agree with that. But like I said, my daughter was vegan for a while, and I was the exact same as you, just sat there. But a lot of times clients will come to me and say, I'm vegan. What can I exchange? Like, if I'll share a recipe, what can I exchange the chicken for? And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. If you're vegan, I have to stress to you, you have to do your homework. If you choose to have this lifestyle, it's a very difficult lifestyle and you can't wing it. So you need to find somebody that's in that space that can teach you how to, and I mean, I totally agree with you, but if they're going to be vegan, it's not something that you can just, decide to be and then eat the Oreos and the French fries because they're vegan. It's so important that that you're getting all of, your amino acids and all of the micro and macronutrients that you need to be healthy. And if you aren't sure of what you should be eating, then you either do not be vegan, or you need to really do some homework to learn that style of eating, because it can be incredibly nutrient deficient if otherwise.
Yeah, one of the other big things I see a lot is women who don't eat enough animal protein or don't eat it in general. They don't get enough B vitamins, especially vegan with no eggs. And the B vitamins are what put the garbage tag on your estrogens in the liver to help you remove it. And so if you're deficient in your B vitamins, there's a whole bunch of them, you cannot do your processes in your liver. And so you're going to get estrogen dominance. You're going to have this horrible imbalance. It's going to drive PMS, fibroids, endometriosis, heavy periods. It feels terrible. It causes weight gain around your hips because estrogen is a growth hormone. It's trying to grow you and get you ready for a baby. And hormones don't cause cancer, but imbalanced hormones drive cellular dysfunction and DNA damage, and that can cause cancer. And so if you are going years and years with these hormone imbalances, you are increasing your risk of cancer. It's not estrogen that causes cancer. That's a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
But I just want women to understand, like, there's many reasons that animals seem to really help us keep a hormone balance.
Yeah, for sure. So in one of your posts that I found incredibly interesting is you talking about obviously the bliss point of food and us being experiments. And then also I've had Dr. Tarman on my podcast, and talking about food addiction in and of itself. And for some people that's very walk on eggshell kind of topic, because some people will tell you absolutely you can't compare food addiction to other forms of addiction. And then there's people, especially people who've been in that space like Dr. Tarman, who say food can absolutely be addictive. Can you give your point of view on how these companies are spending the billions of dollars to make us, want these foods that can be addictive.
Yeah, I mean, they make products. I don't even like to call it food. It's like Frankenfood. It's like these chemical experiments they make in the lab. They take some kind of food basis and then they create this other food, Frankenfood. But they put chemicals in that actually cause neurotransmitters in our brain to be produced that are the same neurotransmitters that are associated with addictions of other kinds. It's very common. And for a lot of people, gluten, they produce something called gluteomorphines. So some people who eat gluten from grains actually make this chemical gluteomorphine, and it gives you a euphoric feeling in your brain. So it feels amazing, like taking a morphine drug. It's hitting the same receptors. And so some people feel really freaking good when they, eat a stack of waffles or whatever, or a bagel. And then they need more, like 20 minutes later, 30 minutes later, they just need more. And if you start your day out like that, you're just setting yourself up for disaster. And I was one of those people, like literally food talked to me. I worked in a doctor's office and there were always donuts in the break room. There was always a birthday cake. It was always somebody's birthday. There was always cookies from the drug rep and all garbage. And literally, it talked to me all day. It was one of the main thoughts I had all day long. It was very distracting. It was very overwhelming. And all I could do was give in to shut it up for another half an hour, and then it would come right back. So I firmly believe that addiction is just as strong as other addictions. And you have to cut it out at the knees. Like, you have to just stop 100% eating all of that Frankenfood. No matter how good it looks, no matter how homemade it is, like that high amount of gluten and sugar, it's like this blissfully perfect combination. And it ruins a lot of women. And you know this, it feeds yeast and bad bacteria in our gut, and they make chemicals, and then they start craving it. And so those cravings you think are your cravings, and you have to kill it all off. You have to kill off the yeast, you have to kill off the bacteria to get rid of the cravings. And honestly, what I did was I transitioned to fruit. I ate my weight in fruit in the mornings because I needed to serve that sugar addiction somehow. Like, fruit didn't even taste sweet to me in the beginning. And I kept it to like berries and melon, and slowly I backed off. And I realized after a month, that stuff was really sweet now all of a sudden. Like, I had my taste buds back. Things had shifted. And I no longer needed to eat a lot of it. But you got to do whatever you have to do to get off of that, if that's your life. Like, if you hide M&Ms in your drawer and you're just eating them all day, I had a patient like that, they have to go. They just do. You can't eat like you're a teenager anymore.
Right. And I think that we're, with this day and age of social media, it's such a sensitive subject. Number one, to tell people abstinence instead of moderation, because I just yesterday did a solo podcast, or recorded a solo podcast talking about labeling food as bad. And I feel bad for doing it, but I really truly believe there's good and bad. There's harmful and helpful foods. And we're kind of stuck in this mindset of sparing people's feelings. And I know they have an emotional attachment to food, but if something like Doritos, or I use Takis as an example, or in kids, that's all they're eating for lunch is a bag of Doritos. They need to know that that's bad, that's unhealthy for them, and get over the fact that there's good and bad, and there is.
Right. You shouldn't feel bad about saying that, because those aren't foods. Like, honestly, if we are actually being honest with ourselves, a lot of the stuff that we are consuming is not food. It really is not food. We have no business putting it in our bodies. Our bodies are a temple. They were created to be nourished, and we are really treating them like a garbage can. And I get it. Like when I was in residency and I was pregnant with my son, like I feel horrible about this. There was a drive-through Dairy Queen, and literally I would do 12 hours of residency work all day where I just get my butt kicked nonstop, being in the OR, pregnant, not even peeing. I would hit the drive-through Dairy Queen on my way home and eat a Blizzard for dinner for my one meal. And I justified it in my brain because I was staying under 1,800 calories. I was getting my dairy in. That was my justification. There's protein in milk. And I would talk myself into these like crazy beliefs. And it was all wrong. It was lies. I was not nourishing myself. My poor baby. I don't know how he turned out as amazing as he did. But like, that is a harmful way of thinking, but that is what we do to ourselves because of the snacking industry really brainwashing us. And so I just encourage women to wake up and take back control and stop like listening to all the lies. You're not supposed to eat every 2 hours. God did not put grocery stores on every corner how many thousands of years ago. We survived as a species without eating every 2 hours. Our physiology does not want us to eat every 2 hours. Our pancreas wants a break. Our pancreas wants us to go without food for 14 to 16 hours on a regular basis. That is what a healthy body does. A healthy body does not continually consume. And it's hard for people to hear, but I do it in a loving way because I actually want you to be healthy. And when you go into menopause, if you don't have this stuff lined up, it's rough. It's really rough.
Yeah. So I noticed that you and Cynthia Thurlow, I had her on the podcast too, wonderful lady, communicate. So I was going to ask you, because I hadn't seen anything on your social media, or I missed it, about fasting. I know she's very big into fasting. I started off, I always joke, as an accidental intermittent faster, because in my late 20s and all through my 30s, I taught group exercise, and I did it on an empty stomach because I just felt better, and I didn't realize I was fasting. And finally someone brought it to my attention. You're a faster. And I'm like, what's that? And so now it's just become a huge passion of mine. But I'm curious, your thoughts on that, and maybe especially for women, if, because you talked about, on your period, there's different ways to eat and activity levels and exercise. Do you feel that way if you do believe in fasting, or if there should be a change when you are going through different hormonal patterns each month?
Yes. So I absolutely believe in fasting. I believe that's how God created our bodies to function. We're naturally supposed to cycle in and out of feast and famine mode. Like as a species, we didn't have food available to us for a while, 1 to 3 days. Then we would get food and we would feast, and then we would go without again. And so our bodies know very well how to handle that. And it's only been in this past 100 years that we've really been spoiled and have this abundance of food available at every hour of the day. Like my dad does DoorDash now, and he delivers food to people at all hours of the day. It's like, oh my gosh, we never have to go without, but our bodies do not like that. It really causes a lot of dysfunction. And it's really important to get this right for women. So a guy does intermittent fasting, he drops 15 pounds, he feels amazing. Everybody's like, oh, good job. Women, you need to listen to your bodies. So if you're trying to have a baby, if you're less than 40 some years old and you want to optimize reproductive system, you don't want to do longer fasts. You want to make sure you're nourishing your body and getting in enough of what you need. And Stephanie Estima does a great job of, this intermittent fasting with cycling and really focusing on giving your body the nourishing foods that it needs right before your period and when you ovulate. But in general, every woman should be abstaining from food at least 12 hours a day. Like, I don't care if you're 30 and you're actively trying to have a baby, you have to give your pancreas a rest, because Insulin resistance is sharply on the rise, and that's one of the biggest reasons for infertility. So you have to give your pancreas a rest. Stop eating at least 2 to 3 hours before bedtime. You don't want to be metabolizing food while you're trying to sleep and restore yourself. So that's key number one. Once you hit perimenopause, menopause, you should be doing longer fasts every now and then with your carb cycling. I do an 8-week program called the Gutsy Hormone Solution, where I teach women how to go from regular everyday eating, all those Franken foods in the boxes and bags, how to get rid of the snacks, tighten up your eating window, drop off breakfast, do a longer fast, and then add in the higher carb days. Because here's where we fail as women a lot of the times. We're like, let's do keto nonstop, 100%. Let's just do intermittent fasting every day. Our bodies, they think that we're starving it, and they will turn down our thyroid every time. And then you get into this sluggish thyroid picture, and your metabolism is turned down. And so you may have lost 20 pounds, but then all of a sudden it pops back on, and then some. That rebound weight gain is a sign that you pushed it too far, and your thyroid panicked and said, oh my gosh, she's starving us to death. Divert all of our energy, decrease the resources, and downregulate. And when it does that, it makes reverse T3. Reverse T3 is like putting on the brakes. And so your bowels slow down, your hair slows down, everything slows down. You get dry skin, your periods slow down, you don't reproduce anymore. And it's really hard to get out of that. And so you want to tell your body, oh, I'm not starving, I'm just, shifting. And so if you eat enough while you do eat, you won't end up in that hypothyroid state. So it's really important. It's not about eating less, it's about eating less often. So
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And you and I are on video, and most people listen to my podcast, but Dr. Tabatha's probably looking at me wondering why I look like the Cheshire Cat, because I have an ear-to-ear grin, because you're a triple board certified doctor. And I just really appreciate that mindset, because I'll be honest, you hear a lot of some fit influencers on social media that will, poo-poo fasting. And I'm like, oh, but the smartest people in the world, talk about how it's just naturally ingrained in us. And everybody will do it obviously a little bit different. And everybody can make it work for them, but to, just to cut it off, and say that it's just not healthy and we weren't designed to do it. I'm just like, no. Listen to the experts. They really know. If I can, I want to ask you, because this is a really common question that I get here lately, is hormone replacement therapy. Your thoughts on that for women that are, have had hysterectomies or going through the change, what you feel about incorporating that?
Oh my goodness. So I could talk about this topic all day. I'll try to keep it concise. So when I went through medical school, everybody was on hormone replacement therapy. If you went into menopause, you got estrogen. If you didn't have a uterus, if you had a uterus, you got estrogen and some synthetic progestin. So it was common to give Prempro. That was a synthetic hormone medication.
Okay.
And then this crazy study came out in 2002, the Women's Health Initiative, scared everybody. It was completely inaccurate. It was stopped early. The information was blown way out of proportion. It was misguided. Everybody panicked and said hormones cause cancer. You have to be off hormones today. So doctors across the country took everybody off their hormones, and a lot of women suffered and are still suffering. There were hundreds of studies before that study that showed that hormones were beneficial for women. There have been studies since the WHI that have again shown that we have estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone receptors throughout our whole body. So we have receptors in our brain, in our cardiovascular system, in our bones, in our vagina, in our pelvis, in our ligaments. And they like those hormones. That is how they function and stay young. And it is very clear now that when women go into menopause and those hormone levels decline permanently, we see changes in all of those systems. So we see heart, hypertension, the blood pressure increases because those arteries are no longer pliable and elastic. They harden, they get stiffer. And so your blood has to pump harder to get through there. Your cholesterol numbers shift. You start to see insulin resistance. And just watch your numbers. If you're going through menopause, look at your blood work, compared to a couple of years ago, and you're going to see your insulin and fasting blood sugar go up, your cholesterol numbers go up, your blood pressure numbers are going to go up, your bone density is going to go down, you're going to start losing bone. Alzheimer's is like 2/3 a female issue, and it's happening at a younger and younger age now. We're seeing so much dementia in women. And you ask any woman who's gone through menopause, they will tell you they cannot think, they cannot remember, they cannot, complete a sentence. And unfortunately, this really affects women because for a lot of us, we're at the height of our career during this transition. We're like the CEOs, or we're running our own businesses, or we're running the PTA, or whatever we're doing. We need to be on. We're used to multitasking. Our brains need to function. And every single day I get women saying, I cannot even think clearly. I can't talk in a meeting anymore. I can't get through my job. I can't function. And so what I used to say to women, well, menopause is a natural thing. Just do whatever you're comfortable with. Let's talk about the risks and the benefits. If you want to avoid hot flashes, night sweats, mood swings, we can talk about hormone therapy. If you want to go into menopause naturally, let's just support your other systems. And then I went through menopause. And that was a game changer, and I couldn't function. So this was the scariest thing that's ever happened to me, Melissa, is I was on the couch for 3 days. I wouldn't talk to my husband. I was done. I didn't want anything to do with him. I didn't want my practice anymore. I didn't want my friends. I didn't care about anything. And it took me 4 days. And I realized on the 4th day, oh my God, I think my estrogen tanked. And I put an estrogen patch on, and I started to feel a little bit normal. I put a second patch on, and I felt like myself by the 3rd day. And it was a life-changing experience. I've listened to my patients, I've tried to understand, but that was so dramatic and so obvious to me. It took me out. I couldn't function. I didn't want my life anymore. And women tell me these things, but it's not usually that dramatic. And so to me, that was a wake-up call from God. You need to share this message that hormones really do make us who we are as women. And, I used to advocate just go into menopause, just deal with it. But honestly, we're living so much longer than we ever did before in history. 100 years ago, the average lifespan was 49. You died. You didn't live in menopause. And now we live almost half of our life in menopause. So I'm not doing that. I'm not signing up for a life without hormones because it feels terrible. And part of it was that my adrenals are already tanked. And if you don't have good functioning adrenals, you don't transition into menopause as well. This is a really important thing for women to understand is our adrenals are our backup ovaries. So they make testosterone and estrogen from DHEA, but they can't do that if you've wiped them out in your 30s and 40s, which a lot of us do. And so as soon as your ovaries start failing, your body's like, okay, adrenals, give us some hormones, and they can't do it. You're done. You're just on the floor. Right. And so that's why it's really important for women to get tested, see what's actually going on with them. Stop guessing, stop just going based on symptoms, because symptoms can be overlapping with a lot of things. Sometimes they can give you an idea and a good way of gauging, where do we start looking? What do we test first? But I always say test, don't guess. And the problem is, if you ask your conventional gynecologist for these tests, they're going to look at the reference range on the lab and tell you you're normal and you're fine, because those reference ranges are to either rule out a tumor or tell you you're completely not making hormones. Those ranges are not helpful whatsoever. You cannot go by lab ranges from the conventional world. So unfortunately, you're probably not going to get the answers that you're looking for from your conventional doctor, and you need a practitioner in the functional space, the anti-aging or alternative space to really help you navigate this. But you can totally feel amazing and slow down the aging process and keep your vaginal health and your libido and your brain function and all that important stuff for as long as you want in a safe way if you're working with the right practitioner. So it's totally possible. That's what we do every day. Like I have a Healthy Her program where we do everything, like the gut, the hormones, all of it. And then there's some women who just need hormone replacement or thyroid management, that type of thing. And there's answers out there for you guys, I promise.
That all makes so much sense. And it's good to hear that, when I was telling you before we started that, my mom had an early hysterectomy. And she feels the same way. It was way back then when they gutted her. She says they gutted her like a fish, and I think she needed all of that. And back then, the hormone replacement isn't near what it is today, and it was such a hard time for her and the whole family for a very long time because of that. And so it's so nice to hear that, obviously we've come a long way science wise with that and with testing, and that it is and can be such a healthy part of you, kind of getting yourself transitioning from, childbearing to non-childbearing to be able to live healthily and energetically through your 70s, 80s, 90s, and hopefully above that. Now, this is another question. I have two more questions for you. This one is a huge one as well. And my girlfriend that I shared with you, Dr. Lauren, has her very strong opinion about this as well. And I'm thinking you're going to be the same. Can you talk a little bit about birth control and birth control that is usually prescribed for women for symptoms, not necessarily to obviously keep from getting pregnant, but for anything outside of actually getting pregnant when they're prescribed birth control? Your thoughts on that?
Yes, this is a really important topic. So I was on birth control at the age of 15, and I went on antibiotics. I got pregnant. So obviously you got to be careful with that. But I went back on the birth control pill when I went to college, and it helped prevent me from having another baby. So really, it's an important tool for women to be able to have. But if I would have known that it causes all the issues that it does, I would not have stayed on it as long as I did. So I just believe that we need to have a more in-depth conversation with women, and they actually need informed consent. We're not telling women the problems related to birth control, especially long-term birth control use. So birth control pills are synthetic estrogens from horse urine and synthetic progestins. They're not the same chemicals made in our body. They're different. They're enough that they tell the uterus what to do, but they act differently on the receptors throughout the rest of our body. So most women on synthetic progestins gain weight and feel miserable, depressed, anxious, whereas on natural progesterone, they feel amazing. They sleep better, they're less anxious, they keeps their weight in check. And so I would just want women to understand what they're signing up for. A synthetic hormone. We don't know the long-term effects. I will tell you the WHI study that came out in 2002, those were synthetic hormones that were studied, and the small increased risks of those that were associated with blood clot, stroke, and a tiny risk of breast cancer. Those were from the synthetic progestins and conjugated equine estrogens that we give in birth control pills to a woman for 20 or 30 years without batting an eye. And then as soon as she turns 50, we freak out and say, oh my gosh, you got to get off of that or you're going to get breast cancer. There's no common sense at all. So honestly, what you're doing for 20 or 30 years is probably having a much bigger impact on your cellular health and your risk of breast cancer than anything you're doing after menopause. But that will not be studied, I promise you, because we do want that option as women to to take birth control and have the ability to control our fertility, right? But I want you to also know that it causes leaky gut. So leaky gut is the leading driver of autoimmune conditions. So I have no doubt that being on birth control pills at 15 years old and then the stress of becoming pregnant contributed to my Hashimoto's being turned on. You know, those autoimmune conditions lay dormant. You don't automatically, you know, are born with autoimmune conditions. They develop from leaky gut and triggers. And so it causes leaky gut. It causes vitamin and mineral deficiencies big time. It depletes your B vitamins, which we already said you need for your estrogen metabolism. So you take a synthetic estrogen, you don't metabolize it properly, you get into this hormone imbalance picture, and you stay there for like 20 years, and then you try to come off and have a baby, and lo and behold, we have so many women now who cannot get pregnant. It's a real issue, and it's because of these synthetic hormones. So I really want women to understand what they're signing up for. Use it only for birth control. If you're using it for symptom management, find out why you're having the symptom. And this is the biggest takeaway that I think women need to hear. Birth control pills do not regulate your hormones. They override your system and stop your own hormone production. So normally our brain and our ovaries have a conversation. They're constantly talking. FSH and LH are being produced in the brain. It's talking to the ovaries. The estrogen and progesterone are talking back to the brain. The birth control pill shuts that communication down. So you no longer make your estrogen and progesterone, and you no longer make your testosterone. So birth control pills usually wipe out your libido, and they change the kind of man you're attracted to. Somebody did a whole study and wrote a whole book on this. Like, it's a legit thing. It changes you as a person because your hormones are who you are. And so I just want women to understand, like, you're not regulating your period at all. And I see that a lot with the Mirena IUD. We were told by the IUD companies that it just works locally on the uterus. The synthetic progestin just stays in the uterus and just prevents the lining from growing. Well, your ovary is literally an inch away from your uterus, and it's connected by a big fat artery. And so that progestin goes in the bloodstream directly to your ovary before it goes anywhere else in your body, and it shuts down your hormone production. And so women on the Mirena IUD, some love it, but a lot of them have weight gain and mood swings, depression, anxiety, because they have stopped their hormone production. And so it's just really important for women to know what they're signing up for in the long term.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for that. That's a great
Yes.
explanation. Last question before I ask where also people can find you is talk to my followers really quick about our circadian rhythm, your I assume love for apple cider vinegar, and then why you drink lukewarm water.
Yes. So there's some evidence that drinking cold water really causes the esophagus to contract, and it jolts your nervous system. So in the morning time, you really want this nice cortisol awakening response. That is your adrenal glands making cortisol. I think of it like your body's natural cup of coffee. It goes up and it wakes you up, and then it kind of comes down the rest of the day. And that gives you energy to function and do the things you need to do. But if we don't have good circadian rhythms, if we are going to bed really late, sleeping in too late in the morning, not getting sunlight in our retinas in the morning, all of that, or jolting our nervous system in the morning, you're not going to get a nice cortisol awakening response and a proper pattern throughout the day. And that is needed to keep your adrenals healthy and functioning. Remember, because I said it affects your sex hormones. So I tell women, as soon as you wake up, like, go outside, get the sun hitting your retinas in the morning, breathe the air, drink some lukewarm water, throw a teaspoon apple cider vinegar in there. It's got your probiotics and everything to feed your healthy gut. And that's like a great way to start your morning, like legitimately that corrects probably 30% of women's issues right there. And it's so simple. And they're just surprised. They're like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. Imagine that. Because if you don't go to bed at like 10:30, you're not going to make the melatonin, your circadian rhythm. It's a little clock in your brain. It's going to be off, and you're not going to make your hormones at the right time. You're not going to be able to heal all the processes that happen through the day in your body. And so you really do need to respect, like, waking up with the sun, going to bed in the dark. And I'm in Michigan, so that's a little bit off, right? It's now dark. It's 5 o'clock at night, and it's a mess. So I like to do a little hack. I use a full spectrum white light that I just bought on Amazon, and I shine that in my direction for the first 10 or 15 minutes in the morning if there's no sun.
Smart.
Exercise in the morning. Exercise in a fasted state, and you'll lose weight, and you'll make cortisol, you'll make DHEA, you'll make testosterone. Lift weights. Get out there and start lifting weights. Don't do like an hour of cardio and no weightlifting. You're going to burn out your adrenals even more. So there's method to all the madness. There's, smart ways to do things. And unfortunately, everything you did in 1990, just do the opposite. Seriously.
Oh, amen to that.
It was the no fat, low fat cardio for days. Oh my gosh. Like, everything we did was wrong. The moderation, just have a glass of wine every night, just one, like, everything was wrong. Right. And it's the truth. We learned the hard way.
That's what, and it's funny too, because I've always been a proponent of, getting a good amount of water first thing in the morning, before I have my coffee. And I used to grab cold water out of the fridge. And I've learned here just recently that if I just leave water out next to the coffee pot and it's room temperature, I can get down so much more comfortably, because like you said, the cold water, you drink, you're like, and then you try to drink more, and it's there's legitimacy to that I can chug and feel so much more comfortable with that room temperature water than super cold water. So that's
funny.
I
mean, your esophagus and your stomach, right where they connect, it kind of goes through your diaphragm, the big muscle that separates your chest that goes up and down, and your vagus nerve goes through there. And that is the most important nerve to keep you balanced and in a parasympathetic rest and digest state. And if you go and jolt your diaphragm with cold water, you're going to stimulate a sympathetic response. You're going to turn off the vagus nerve and have this jolt, and it does not feel good. And I literally fill up a pitcher, from the filtered water and let it sit out all day, because that way I have room temperature water all day. Because having Hashimoto's, I don't like being cold. I can barely drink a smoothie, or like my Raynaud's is kicking in and my fingertips are gone. So find out whatever hack works for you to get the water in, right?
Totally agree with that. And that's just funny to me that I've just recently done that, because you hear the cold water boost your metabolism because it takes energy to warm the water back up to your body temperature and stuff. But the point is to get plenty of water in, and I can get water down when it's more room temperature with a little bit of lemon or apple cider vinegar. So I'm not gonna. This has been wonderful. I am on cloud nine. Such an amazing interview. Thank you so much. And I want everybody to know, besides Instagram at the Gutsy Gynecologist, where else they can find you, and especially look at some of these programs that you have to help them through some of these issues that us women have that nobody's talking about, that you're helping them through. Where they find all that stuff?
Yes. Oh my goodness. Go to my website, drtabatha.com. It's DRTABATHA, 3 A's, no I's. And I'm licensed in over half the country. So women can actually get prescriptions. They can get functional medicine from a provider. You don't have to go to your primary care doctor down the street. You can't rely on insurance, but insurance is like your car insurance. Like, it's going to cover it if you get in a crash and you need a new car, but it's not going to cover your oil change and your tire rotation and all of that maintenance stuff, which you need to be healthy. So, that was the biggest thing that I learned was insurance isn't here to get us healthy or keep us healthy. And so we need to stop relying on them and their recommendations and what they cover. And like, I'm done with all of that because it's such a barrier to actually getting well. So women can come see us. I have a team, they can come see us and actually figure out their root cause issues and get back into balance and feel amazing. So don't hesitate to reach out because you deserve to feel good and feel amazing. You really do. Life's too short.
It really is. And you've said in your podcast that, you can either be the victim or the victor. And I, from the bottom of my heart, really feel like you help women be the victors of their own life. You're normalizing things that, like you said, have been hush hush. And I truly appreciate it. And I know that I'm thanking my followers are by thanking you. I know that they are as well. And please continue to keep doing what you're doing and keep that voice out because it's absolutely huge and so needed this day and age, because I feel like with the social media world, we tend to get very, very confused. And I think that's where most of my listeners are coming from, is from a confused state. And I think you do such a beautiful job of simplifying it and educating people behind it so they really understand how their body works and also how to fix it. So thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, you're welcome. And that's why I do my podcast, just to get the truth out there, because women aren't getting the answers that they need from their doctors, and we're all confused. And so I've sifted through everything for you. I figured it all out. I just present it. So, keep learning. That's the best thing that you can do for yourself. Thank you for having this awesome podcast.
Oh, you're welcome. And I have to end it. I keep meaning to say, I knew you were a mom, but I had no idea you were a grandma.
Yeah.
Mind blown. Oh
my goodness. Yes, he's 4.5. He's like the best thing ever. So good.
My goodness, I bet. So thank you guys for tuning in on this. And as always, I want you to wake up feeling prepared, and I want you to go to bed feeling proud. Have a great day. Thank you, Dr. Tabatha. Wow, we've reached the end. But before I leave you, I'd love to hear from you. After all, it's not every day that someone reaches out and asks for your opinion. And to me, your opinion does matter. So please share this episode with anyone that you think needs to hear this message. And remember to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. My name is Melissa McAllister. And until next time, thank you for being your own health advocate.